Welcome to the Tailored Agent Podcast. I'm your host and co-founder, John Van Horn. We're sharing stories of successful agents across the country to find out what makes them tick. We created the Tailored Agent Elite Evaluation to unlock real estate agents' sales potentials. We do that by highlighting what makes them and strengthening that moving forward. Today, episode 1, we have co-founder of Tailored Agent and successful real estate agent, Ryan Johnston of Atlanta Fine Homes Sotheby's. Welcome, Ryan.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, John. Excited to dive into it.
Yeah, Ryan, before we get started, I really want to know more of your background. I've known you for over 10 years. We've trained together. We used to wake up at 4 a.m., be in the gym by 4:30, working out, doing all that stuff before we hit the office. And, I just want to learn more about your background. So can you take us through what you went through before you made the decision to join a real estate team?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's a little natural of a progression for a lot of people. I really always kind of just wanted to grow up and wear a suit to work every day. I graduated high school in 2006. Once I got to college, I hadn't really figured out kind of my path. And I think that's just natural for a lot of people. So I did what any normal person would do and elected business management, which couldn't be more generic and unspecific. I thought back then that I would end up on Wall Street or potentially working in banking. 2008 happens, the bottom falls out of all of that. And when I graduated in 2010, I didn't have a plan. I went through 4 years, probably had way too much fun and didn't value the academic side and just took the first job that someone gave me. I call this the dark era of my life. I was working for a company that was an auto shop and did tire sales. I was the manager of the tire sales. It was difficult back then because all of my friends went out and got normal corporate jobs. They had set schedules Monday to Friday. And here I was I had a degree, was an hourly worker, not making a lot hourly at a shop where you were expected to be there from 7 to 7 and work weekends. So it really kind of just took a toll on my personal life and honestly morale of going through all of the educational stuff, which for me had never been a super strength. And then when you're finally on the other side, it's just kind of, you look back and it's what did I even do? And that kind of got to the point after a year and a half where I just couldn't take it anymore. It put me in a spot that I didn't like where I was mentally. I randomly, this is obviously dating myself, early 2010s, was on Craigslist looking for, your next job offer, as anyone does.
Yeah.
And found a leasing agent position. I didn't really know anything about it. It was touting this massive new 30-story high rise, all these certifications, and it was billed as luxury. And for me, it just sounded prestigious. And, I look back now and I'm talking to you the job paid $32,000 a year. It wasn't anything major either, but from what I was coming from as a next step, it felt like a huge accomplishment. One of the benefits is they just made us get our real estate license as part of that. And not all of the companies do that. So being up in Connecticut when I did this, I just dove into the leasing side and kind of, as you do a little bit more, showing apartments, dealing with prospective tenants, especially for a luxury building, it just got me thinking more about the architecture, the design. This was also right around the same time $1 Million Listing came out on Bravo, which also sounds terrible that I've watched all of those episodes, but that kind of planted the bug. And it was hey, maybe there's something more interesting than just trying to do the same thing every day, and just want to give it a shot.
So it's really fascinating to me because I feel like the other realtors that are listening to this, they may be able to relate, but there's other realtors that they enter the real estate industry in so many different ways. But we hear all these stories about my family was in real estate, or I didn't really know what to do, or I wanted more flexibility in my life, and all these different things. So you were drawn to luxury leasing at first. Did you ever feel that you were deciding between leasing and just going full on sales? Or,
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the aha moments was working on a leasing site. Obviously, you, for the most part, have a base salary, and then you get very small additional incentives for leasing the units, depending on the structure. But we would have real estate agents that would come in with prospective tenants. And if the tenant signed, that person would get a referral fee as a licensed real estate agent. So I'll never forget, there was this one woman that, I mean, she was a hustler, but she would come in her pajamas, fuzzy slippers, really just like full on disheveled, but straight to the point, no mess around. And she just kept having all of these people sign up with leases. And she was just clipping $1,000 off each of them at the time for what seemed like no work, because once she brought them in the door, I had to take over and do the full tour and
yeah,
explanation, everything. Um, and that was kind of the first take where I was like, okay, well, maybe there's an easier path here. Obviously, being young, early 20s and naive, um, you just get a little kind of blinded by the financial aspect of it and think that's just naturally going to come easy because other people make it look that way.
yeah.
And it turned out that just wasn't the case.
So you touched on a point I want to ask, and then I want to get really into those early years of something. But do you feel that when you started out in real estate, especially in that leasing role, you felt like you had to be someone else to sell more or to be, quote unquote, successful? Were you scared about being yourself versus like, I want to try to be like that person?
Yeah, I think personally for me, I don't think that ever goes away. I think, doing this 10 years now, I still feel the imposter syndrome. And there's times where it's like, if you have your peaks or lows, maybe you don't have as many listings or there's no current buyers. And then you see all of the other people on social media and posting their sales and their big numbers. And real estate to me is very mental, and it's a battle with yourself, because I think there's a lot of agents that can't just pick up and run with it. They're constantly, and that's why the turnover is so high. Um, when I first decided to leave my leasing job, and I actually reached out to that lady in the pajamas and fuzzy slippers, I wanted to work for her. I was like, show me what you're doing, take me under your wing, and I want to sell. And I left my secure job with benefits and pay, even, it wasn't much, but it was doing what it needed.
Yeah.
And I sold my Mustang, which I absolutely loved that car. So I got this little 4-door sedan that was like, I can drive clients around. I had my studio apartment, and I ventured into it with a little less than $5,000, which at the time to me was a lot of money. I made it 3 months before not only had I burned through all of my savings, but it turns out that the person I was working with wasn't necessarily someone that I felt compatible with. And the way she was going about doing business wasn't necessarily what I wanted to emulate, as easy as it looked on the other side.
Yeah.
And that was kind of just like, I mean, man, talk about getting kicked in the teeth. It's like you change your life, you go out on a limb, dive into the deep end, and you just fail miserably. So within less than 6 months, I had to go back and start finding other jobs again that I didn't want to do, just because I was running out of money and I had to still live. And it wasn't until I spent another year and a half going back to a previous job, trying to understand things a little bit more, where I went wrong. And then I geared up and took a second stab at it, which has ended up holding this past decade. But it's just like, for the main part, like, I was a statistic. I was one of the people that got in, and I didn't even make it 2 years. I made it months and was just chewed out.
That second attempt is when we met,
Mhm.
I assume. And that was a very interesting team, very high volume, but you said, there's something that resonated with me is that business, that we feel like there's maybe one or two or three ways to do business. And it's not true. From my
Sure.
own experience, not just through real estate, through all these other things, there's so many different ways to do business that finding your groove, finding your niche is really probably the best method for individuals going into business, whether it's real estate or you're all the other crazy stuff I've done. So, what I want to ask you is that how and when, how much from the time you got your real estate license to the time you felt like you really were getting into your groove and you found your niche? Because I'll tease that you're in luxury home sales right now and you're doing a damn good job. You're a phenomenal agent. So from the time you got into real estate to the time you found your groove and your niche, please, let's walk me through that.
Yeah, I think honestly, so I started my second stint in 2014, and I would say it wasn't until COVID and that 2020, 2021 that I felt like I was finding my true path forward. Because something for me is like I care immensely about what I do. And I've always had more of a business mind. I've been buying and selling things since I was a little kid. I like the negotiation and the sales aspect of it, but I'm not overly salesy. And for me, growing up the way I did is just like a handshake means something. And it wasn't like you're trying to always take advantage of somebody, which a lot of transactions in real estate can feel like. So when I went back in the second time, I actually relocated from Connecticut down to Georgia. And I did that with my property management company to be able to have a job in place and make the move. After a month and a half here, I left that, got my Georgia license, and that's kind of where I tried to ramp up. But not knowing anyone in the state of Georgia, I just gravitated towards teams. My thought was, well, if they can help me get the leads and the clients, I'll be able to close the deals. And I think that the tough thing then is some of that from a learning standpoint, it's very beneficial to be on a team because you're just kind of thrown in this massive pool where it's like you have to start proving yourself.
Yeah.
But some of them wanted cold calling, others wanted to go about things that just didn't feel comfortable to me. And it still took a few years of kind of figuring out like I don't want to be on a team. I actually really liked helping and training other agents. So there's that part in the mind with it.
Yeah.
But there's just this fear of going out on your own. It's kind of like, well, when I have to go find my own meal, am I going to be able to do that? And it took a lot of years of just like slowly building up price points and clients and systems to be able to get to that point where, funny enough, I mean, once I feel like I really had the ball rolling, all of a sudden the past few years we had our two daughters, which completely derailed any schedule and progress that it felt like. So long-winded answer, I feel like I'm still navigating that, and I think it's just an evolving process.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I feel the same way too. And I want to transition though into the industry in general because you started in Connecticut, you moved to Georgia. I started in Georgia. I moved to Colorado. There's so many different ways real estate transactions and the flow of things, like markets are so different.
Mm,
I remember Atlanta being so different from 2 hours outside of Atlanta, like completely.
absolutely.
Georgia to Colorado is it's like night and day. So can you explain to people that may have only been in one market, what are some of the industry norms that you found accurate and some that you found false about any of the markets you've been in?
Um, I think one thing that kind of rings true is when the market is good, um, like the past few years, it's been hot. it becomes very difficult for agents to actually articulate a value proposition because inventory is low, homes move relatively quickly. Um, for a while, I always thought that if you were listing a house for sale, that someone in any location could list a home and get it sold, and that you didn't need to be that hyper local force. But I felt differently on the buyer side, where it's like you want to be able to educate the buyers about the immediate area and know exactly, as a local expert and guide, that they're getting into things that are going to fit their needs and lifestyles. I think over time, I've realized it's just like you really want every aspect of it to be hyper local and a specific niche where it's an area. One of the downsides, it's a two-sided coin of the teams. When it came to the teams, yes, they set appointments, but there was no specific area. So as far as greater Atlanta, which is a massive city because you're not gridlocked by water or anything on any side, I've probably sold a house in every town in a 50-mile radius of the city. That's a lot of driving, but it also means I know enough to be slightly dangerous in all areas, but not enough to be like a true expert and really service the clients. Um, and that's the past few years is what I've tried to move away from. Getting hyper local allows you to take back your time a little bit. You're not spending all day driving all over the city and chasing things around where you're not necessarily the best fit for a client. I think in the spirit of always being worried about where the next deal is coming from, I just spread myself too thin and chased too wide of a net, where had I been a little bit more intentional and just kind of honed in on where I was, maybe I would have got the ball rolling a little faster.
Yeah. So before we jump in to your tailored agent elite evaluation results, because I want to jump into that too, but I want to throw you a curveball because why not? It's episode 1. So I'm a big believer. My personal practice I've done is that you take moments in your life, you think 5 years prior to that, and you look at that and say, do I have a different outlook? Do I have a different perspective? Have I learned, or am I relatively the same? For me, I found that it's really helpful when I see a big difference between 5 years prior. And then I go back 5 years prior, 5 years prior, just to say, like, what's my journey like? So I have 2 questions for you. One is 5 years ago, we're, God, this is into COVID. Yeah. 5 years ago, what have you seen yourself grown into, compared to 5 years ago? And then what are you going to tell your future 5 year self? Or, excuse me, what would your future 5 year self tell you right now? So let's start with question 1. 5 years ago, what do you see in yourself?
I think, man, because to me, in my mind, it's like I look at this as like a 10-year track, and it's really the only past 2 years that I think I've kind of come into my own a little bit more.
Mm.
And one is you have to value yourself and you have to value your time. Um, I always felt like I was a better agent than the numbers would indicate that I was doing each year. And a lot of that was just, me standing in my way on some stuff or focusing, not pushing the envelope in the right ways to maybe move up price points or work with different clients. Um, so 5 years ago, I still think I was kind of figuring it out. And it's tough when you tell someone, like if someone's making, let's say, a minimum of 6 figures in real estate, just $100,000,
Yep.
depending on their family situation and where they live, that may not be a lot of money. So that scarcity mindset is always present until you kind of break through a real threshold, especially if they're the only income earner, or if they have kids, or they're in a high cost of living city. And I think for me, it's just nothing ever felt good enough. I've gone through these phases where it's like the burnout just creeps in and you wonder, it's like, is this for me? And should I be in a different industry?
Yeah.
Especially because in the social media era, it's just, not only is it keeping up with the Joneses, but it's in your face 24/7. It's everyone is going to put on the best version of what they want others to view. It's never reality. A lot of the awards and accolades that realtors post about are paid campaigns or things that don't have any substantial weight. Um, and just I was trying to do too much. I think that's where it was like I was trying to wear every hat and wasn't being honest that if I spent some money to try and outsource some things, as painful as it was to pay those bills monthly, maybe I could have achieved my goals a little bit faster.
Yeah.
My favorite quote that I ever heard, I don't even know who said it originally, and it's probably someone simple, so I'll be dumb for it. But it's just, I feel like humans overestimate what they can accomplish in 12 months and underestimate what they can achieve in 5 years or a decade. And it's just, if you look back from 2015 to now, the world is just a wildly different place and all of the change that's happened in that. But we get so bogged down with our day to day that I feel like we almost have blinders on. So, yeah, if I could look back 5 years, I would shake myself and just be like, hey, you need to pull yourself out to 30,000 feet and really just take a look at this.
Yeah, I would totally abduct myself and brainwash myself. No, no, and I think you touched on something too that vulnerability has become this popular thing in the past, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 years. And I think you can use it as a tool. If you're going to go into business, you're going to be vulnerable. There's no escaping it. So being honest, being true, and all that stuff, and sharing what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, then leaning into that, that's extremely important. So the next question I want you to answer is what the future self. What do you see your future self telling you now?
I would say embrace who you are, which leads to being a little bit more confident. I think obviously that plays directly into us launching Tailored Agent.
Yeah.
I think for so like it's very easy to just see how real estate is portrayed on TV or anywhere else, or top producers or on Facebook, and it's made to look so easy because of the glitz and the glam of the properties and the numbers. But behind the scenes, it's a slog. Like, it takes a toll on people's personal lives. They're working evenings, weekends. Majority of agents aren't making money. And you really kind of have to dig in and figure out, it's like, what is going to give me the best opportunity to succeed? I'm naturally a quiet and shy person, but I would go to bat. And like, I have the things I've done for clients that didn't equate to pay, and I know you have as well. I'm talking about, like, moving somebody's entire basement out at 3 in the morning in my car and a rented U-Haul because the seller's refusing to clean out their house, or finishing work on someone else's flip that I have no vested interest in because I'm trying to get to the closing table. I've had clients that turned out to be convicted felons that I didn't know about and do like illegal things throughout the transaction. And it's hard to keep yourself isolated from all of that.
Yeah.
Just really trying to figure out, it's like, who I am as a person. And I think a lot of that you find out more as you age. I feel drastically different in my 30s than I did in my 20s. And knowing, it's like, there's a way I can do this and make it work. And it may not be the same way that other people want me to do it, or what makes other people successful. And that's okay.
Yeah. And without going down the rabbit hole of all the crazy stories us real estate agents have, God, I would love to hear some in the comments. But we all have our crazy ones. Without going down that rabbit hole, let's move on to your Tailored Agent elite evaluation results.
Absolutely.
And before I reveal them, we'll throw them up on the screen too, just so you can see part of what the report shows you, some of the main sections, subsections. We'll throw them on as we're talking. But we created this, Ryan. It took us several months to come up with this. And it's because you trained agents, I've trained agents. We've seen our mistakes in the agents we've trained. We've seen just common mistakes, common themes. And what we did is we created the elite evaluation to have three main parts. And you know this, but I want the audience to hear this. The first part is personality strength. Really, what gives you energy? What makes you want to continue to go after that 3 a.m. clean out? How do you wake up and have the energy to keep going? The second one is real estate strategy. It's basically your playbook. How are you, like we talked about, there's so many different ways to do business, so many different ways to be a real estate agent. What is your strategy? What's your playbook? And then the third main section of the evaluation is your habits. It's your actions. So what is going to, when you combine that energy, strategy, well, then how are you going to attack it? What's the actions? So those are the main sections. You can go to our website to read about the subsections and everything else that goes into it. We put a lot of time into this. And now let's reveal Ryan's results. Okay, Ryan. First main section, personality strength. Your overall personality strength, as we can see on the screen, you're a true ambivert. So before I go into the other section, what I'm doing is I'm going to choose one subsection out of each main section, and then let's talk about the similarities and contrasts. So if your overall main personality strength is true ambivert, your communication, which is a subsection of the personality strength, your communication, you came out as an introvert ambivert, which isn't too far off from true ambivert, but there's that little bit of introvert in there. So when it comes to communication, what gives you energy, and what are your methods of, embracing that introvert to ambivert outcome?
Yeah, I think just knowing what makes me comfortable interacting with people. When I first started in real estate, like we had to do auto dialers, cold calling people. I would literally hang up the second somebody answered. I would hang up the phone and just like pit in the bottom of the stomach. And I feel so bad now because the person whose team I was working on was like, man, this guy his numbers are awful. Like I've hired a lot of people and like he's not even getting conversations because we're tracking all those metrics. But I was just too afraid. And so much of that, you threw out the vulnerable card earlier. Like it's not until you get older that you realize like so much of how I view myself now and why we're all works in progress is because of things that I didn't feel comfortable with as a child or, as I got older. And a lot of that stuff is what kind of made me retreat internally. And, simple things that people like, they just you never know what somebody is self-conscious about or what makes them tick or, what their backstory is. And that's not necessarily like trauma. It could be simple things. It's just some people like I've never been a smiler because I have this thing about my teeth, which is like weird because other people are like, hey, you have like white teeth and now I'm doing Invisalign. But mentally, I just can't get myself over that hurdle to be like, hi, I'm Ryan. And you're like shaking a hand, smiling, even though that's the best way to meet people and get business. So, I think I definitely agree on the introvert side. I like smaller group settings because I think for me, one of my least favorite things is networking in large groups because everyone comes in with the same set of questions. They're trying to figure out how to break the ice. Hi, who are you? What do you do? Where are you from?
Right.
But that doesn't paint a picture of who somebody is as a person. And for me, like I'm that weirdo where it's like if you come in and just obviously if we have like a commonality, great. Like I love watches. If you're wearing a watch or something I can relate to, that's awesome. But if you just spit out like a weird fact about yourself, that to me is so much more interesting and personal. And I will remember that as someone like, I want to get to know more rather than just the basics that we go through. And I think that's tough because like I keep going back to the social media side. But because everyone puts on such a facade all the time,
Yeah.
I almost feel like people are more guarded than they used to be, and they don't know how to talk to people. Obviously, as an introvert, it's easy for me to say that because I don't have the gift of gab with strangers. But it's interesting. I thought it was pretty accurate. I think um, earlier in the career, I would have skewed more to the direct introvert side. I think over time, as you get more comfortable and you deal with more people, you really kind of learn, you become more of a chameleon. Like I know other people's personalities, how to interact with them and get the ball rolling for either conversation or what we need to make a transaction happen. But it wasn't always that way. It takes some time.
And honestly, like whenever you're genuinely yourself, that potential client can pick up on that. And there was a saying that when we were on that high volume team, there was a saying that I can't remember who it was. They said, they're going to smell blood in the water.
Yeah.
So if you go in and you go in and you try to be a hard closer and you're not, or if you go in and you try to be an extrovert when you're an introvert, they're going to pick up on that. You're going to
Right.
come off as and I've seen that. I'm assuming that you've experienced that as well. So communication, I chose that because it's a slight contrast from the true ambivert total, but I think the audience can see that you have this flexibility, you have this range to you, and I think when you lean more into that true ambivert, then you give better service to your client, you make more sales for your business, and so forth. Moving on to the real estate strategy, this is always a fun one. So the real estate strategy, again, it's your playbook. It's how you operate your business in certain areas. So your main result, Ryan, was relationship builder. And the subsection I chose was marketing. Marketing is huge for everyone. Every business needs to market. We know that, tailored agent. But your outcome in marketing was problem solver. So I want you to take a few minutes and maybe not a few minutes, just a few thoughts, just to share with people. If you're generally a relationship builder in your business, when it comes to marketing, what is it about problem solving that you feel leaning into that leads to more success in that?
Yeah, I think it's weird because even on the relationship side, like I can look back and it's so easy to become really transactional in real estate. And I was for a very long time. Like I am still actively working to make sure that my clients know that I value them more than the transaction. And like some people are great at that. Sometimes because I'm a numbers and facts person,
Yeah.
it's something that I know I have to overcome and do a better job with. I think with the problem solving aspect, every appointment, it's like the person you're meeting with has the problem. They need to make a move. And then what is that? Like, are they buying a house? Are they selling a house? Is it a family reason? Is it a job? And then you kind of just start peeling back the layers. Do they need to get a certain amount of money for it? Are they working within a certain budget? And these are intimate things for a lot of people because you're letting somebody into some deep parts of your personal life with the expectation that they're not just doing this for a commission check. And I think that's hard to communicate sometimes, just because like we are in sales and the goal is ultimate, like we all have to get paid.
Yeah.
But looking at it as an obstacle, I think one of the things, especially now when it comes to like selling a home, it's so easy to just take photos and put something online. But it's like, is that the right approach to get that in front of the right people? Or is it going to require video or targeted ads or social media? Or do you just need to farm the neighborhood and maybe one of the neighbors has somebody trying to get in?
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, it's fascinating that each house kind of represents its own Rubik's Cube. And it's just over time, you kind of formulate a different plan for everything. And it goes back to like, the individuality aspect of like, if you understand yourself and that's kind of evolving and you keep finding ways to do business that best suits you, Same things with the home. Every client, every house, it's going to require a curated approach to make sure you get done.
Yeah, and the real estate strategy section that we designed it to be, if you haven't taken it already, the elite evaluation, we designed the section to be real estate scenario based. So obviously there's no right or wrong answer. It's really what would you do the most, and what Ryan is pointing to in his marketing questions and answers is that he comes at it very solution based, and that's completely fine. And I just want to point out that the real estate strategy part, it's these scenarios we created, and the answers are going to point you to what is your natural strategy there.
Sure.
So moving on to the habits, the actions. Before we get to that, Ryan, I remember we were training in the gym one morning, and I had this idea of like, how can I give him the best action for a core workout? And do you remember us going out? I don't think the sun was up quite yet, and we were done with our workout, and we went to the outside pool. We were the only ones out there. And I told you.
and I got waterboarded. That's where this is going. Yes. No surrender.
Yeah. So that was an action that I chose. I was like, let's put him through hell. So we used to call it waterboarding. And yeah, so I wanted to share that because I thought it was pretty entertaining. I have no clue why you said yes to that, but I actually enjoyed it too. So moving on to actions, habits. That's a big part of a real estate agent's, overall business, because without the habits, and there's so many books on that, there's so many different, ways to do this. And I'll say we broke down habits into consistency and commitment, two different things there. You came out with flexible as your outcome for habits, as you did for consistency. So consistently, you are flexible when it comes to actions. What does that mean to be flexible in your habits and your actions?
I think honestly, it's just, you kind of know that every day is different. I think one of the important things is real estate. You try and promote time blocking and making sure that you're the owner of your calendar and that you're not just a pop-up agent taking everyone's call. But at the same time, you have to know that there is this expectation, especially depending on the price point and the clients, where you will be available at certain times, or things are going to go wrong at the last minute, there's so many things that change on a daily basis, especially as the industry changes as well. You kind of just have to roll with the punches. It's strange because if I look at the working out aspect, it's like, I can't work out on my own. Like, I need somebody else either coaching me or pushing me along, a group class. Like, I need to be able to look at other people doing it and know where I am in relationship to them. But on the real estate side, like, I don't want to have someone breathing down my neck of being like, how many phone calls did you do today? What is this? And honestly, that could be holding me back. So it's, that's where I think the report is great, because you look at it, it's like, am I flexible for the right reasons? Yeah. Or is it actually creating scenarios where maybe I need to just look at my habits and tendencies a little differently to achieve a different sales outcome? And again, that's something I am still looking at on a daily basis. It's hard. There's a lot of inner lookings for sure.
Well, you mentioned something too I want to highlight is that, these outcomes are meant to highlight and then guide. Mm-hmm. There's nothing about Tailored Agent that's going to say make 50 phone calls a week. Like, that's sure. That's not our approach. So the fact that you came out with flexible actions, we on our website, every single outcome, including all of the subsections with those outcomes, has its own webpage. So every outcome has its own webpage. You can go to the flexible webpage on our site, and it'll show you all these different categories. It'll even suggest books for every outcome, just based on that outcome. So we put a lot of work into this. Ryan, I have one more question for you.
Sure.
And about the evaluation, and we'll start to wrap this up. But of when you took the evaluation and got the report, what was either your favorite or most surprising section when you got those results?
I think kind of the strategy for me is probably the favorite and most interesting because it's really about how people go their day to day. Yeah, I mean, you have your habits and tendencies as well, but as far as the real estate strategy, because all the questions were designed in a sense where it's like there's no wrong answer. And people, this isn't a personality test where you're trying to get hired for a job. Everything is you being honest with how you would handle a certain situation. And I think it does paint a little bit more accurate of a picture for us to look at.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about it, it's like, if you're willing to put in the effort to actually be honest and say, this is who I am, this is how I go about things, you got to take the good and the bad with it. You have to look at that and say like, oh, that maybe this is a time a few years ago where I changed something, which is now showing up on the report. And that's why I got more business for that. Or what we touched on before, maybe this is how I go about things daily that I just need to stop doing that. And it really is limiting income or clients or conversations. So for me, I think one of the big things why it feels right is even for the marketing side, like one of the big avenues of listings, it would be expired listings. I cannot call an expired seller for my life, which what we touched on. But each month I go through the previous expireds. I find ones that I'm genuinely interested in relisting.
Yeah.
I mail them, I snail mail them, I pack it like a very high quality packet. This is not just a printed letter. There's a handwritten note with their name on acknowledging their property, their subdivision, and seeing if that will start a conversation. Because for me, showing like, yes, that's way more time consuming, but you're almost trying to establish that relationship and be more of the relationship builder that I hadn't been previously. And those are kind of what I try to look for now, just having gone through the report. It's where can I find ways to enhance the consumer experience that I may have been lacking previously? And down the road, that'll probably just help me grow my business.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, that's awesome. Thank you for being willing to open up and share your results with our podcast. I know you're a co-founder.
Absolutely.
It's also, there's always that like, oh, here we go. Let me share all my results with everyone that doesn't know me.
Yeah, a lot of skeletons in the closet.
Yeah, trust me, wait till we get to my episode. So Ryan's going to interview me next for episode 2. And I'll share my crazy zigzag background and all that other stuff. But before we go, if anyone wants to reach out to you, Ryan, as a potential client, sending you referrals, any of that stuff, how do they reach you? And we'll put it in the comments, but what's the best way to reach you?
They can, anyone can get to us through the website. That'll go directly to us as well. On Instagram, I am Ryan Sells Atlanta. And then I also, talking about more of a niche product, do have a YouTube channel as well that I'll link down below, which is more of where I live currently and lifestyles there. But happy to answer any questions, even if there's just agents that are trying to get to the next level. If I've already walked in those steps, or you, and maybe we can just share something that we felt we did wrong and they can avoid it. So beneficial.
Yeah. And that goes to, for my contact information as well. And, if you go on our website, thetailoredagent.com, you'll have an option to do a free evaluation if you're not quite ready to commit to the elite. But if you want to jump into the elite, by all means, that's going to be a 62 question test. It'll be more in depth. And let's see. We'll put everything down in the description Thank you thank you, Ryan, and thank you everyone else for tuning into this. We're going to be interviewing people from all different backgrounds, all these different realtors. So as you as a realtor, I hope you get value from this. Reach out with any questions. Go and take the test, free or elite. We're excited to see your results.
Thanks, John.